Stoicism for a Calm Mind, my 7-day anti-anxiety experiment. You know that low hum of anxiety, that constant nagging feeling in the back of your mind that something is about to go wrong. What if I told you that most of that feeling, the things that keep you up at night, are just phantoms? That the worries stealing your peace are wounds you're inflicting on yourself? The Roman Stoic philosopher Seneca once wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. For 1 week, I decided to put that to the ultimate test. I was drowning in a sea of modern anxiety, the endless notifications, the 24-hour news cycle, the pressure to always be on. So, I challenged myself to live like an ancient Stoic. This is the story of that 7-day experiment, and how a 20-year-old philosophy became my lifeline in the 21st century. The problem with worry. Before we get started, let's be honest with each other. The modern world is a masterpiece of anxiety production. We're bombarded with information, social comparisons, and a relentless sense of urgency our ancestors could never have imagined. It creates a constant, low-grade buzz of stress. A feeling of being overwhelmed by things that feel completely out of our control. For me, this showed up as a knot in my stomach. It was the endless loop of what-if scenarios replaying in my head. What if I miss this deadline? What if that presentation bombs? What if I say the wrong thing? What if the economy tanks? What if? This constant state of high alert had real consequences. It led to sleepless nights where I'd just stare at the ceiling, my mind racing through disasters I'd invented. It made me irritable and distracted with the people I care about most. It robbed me of the ability to just be present and enjoy the moment I was actually in. I realized that so much of my unhappiness came from one simple mistake, believing I had control over things when, in fact, I didn't. That realization was my breaking point. I was tired of letting imagined futures ruin my actual present. I'd heard of Stoicism, this ancient Greek and Roman philosophy that taught self-control as a way to overcome destructive emotions. It wasn't about becoming an unfeeling robot. It was about getting the mental tools to navigate the chaos of life with a sense of calm. The names were vaguely familiar. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor. Epictetus, a former slave who became a legendary teacher. Seneca, a playwright and political advisor. These weren't academics hiding in ivory towers. They were men in the arena, dealing with plagues, war, and exile. If their philosophy could bring them peace in that kind of chaos, surely it could do something for my 21st century worries. I decided it was time for an experiment, the decision, the rules. I wasn't just going to read about Stoicism. I was going to try to live it. For 7 days, I decided to build my life around its core principles. I set a few ground rules for myself, creating a sort of daily curriculum for my own philosophical boot camp. Each day would focus on a specific Stoic practice, a mental exercise designed to retrain my anxious brain. My goal wasn't perfection. The Stoics knew that's impossible. The goal was just to practice, to build the mental habits that could, over time, create a calmer, more resilient mind. The rules were simple but powerful. Each morning, I'd start with an intention based on that day's theme. Throughout the day, I would consciously try to apply that principle to any challenge or anxious thought that popped up. Then, every evening, I'd spend time with a journal, reflecting on the day where I succeeded, where I stumbled, and what I learned. This wasn't about bottling up my feelings. It was about questioning them. It was about creating a little bit of space between an event and my reaction to it, and in that space, learning to choose a wise response instead of being a slave to my knee-jerk anxiety. The experiment was set. 7 days, 7 Stoic Principles. 1 Overwhelmed Modern Mind. I was ready to begin. The experiment. A day by day. Day 1. The dichotomy of control. I woke up on Monday with that familiar sense of dread. My inbox was already a monster, and a big project deadline was breathing down my neck. My anxiety was already simmering, but today was different. Today was all about the dichotomy of control. This is probably the most fundamental idea in all of Stoicism, summed up perfectly by Epictetus. He said, "Some things are within our power, while others are not." What's in our power? Our opinions, our choices, our actions. Basically, how we respond to things. What's not in our power? Pretty much everything else. Our health, our reputation, what other people think, and the outcomes of events. So, before I even opened my laptop, I took out my journal and drew a line down the middle of a page. On the left, I listed my worries. The client might hate the final project. My boss might be mad about the timeline. The tech might fail. On the right, I listed what was actually in my control. The effort I put in, the quality of my work, how I communicate with my team, my attitude, how I respond to feedback, good or bad, and the effect. It was immediate. It felt like a weight had just been lifted off my shoulders. All the energy I was wasting worrying about the client's opinion, something I could never control, I could now pour into the things on the right side of the page. Throughout the day, whenever that jolt of anxiety hit me, I'd just ask myself, is this in my control or not? If it wasn't, I practiced letting it go. This didn't make me passive. If anything, I felt more focused and effective because 100% of my energy was going toward things I could actually influence. That evening, I didn't feel the usual post-work dread. I felt a sense of calm. I had done my best with what was mine to control. The rest, I was learning, wasn't my business. Day 2. The view from above. On Tuesday, the plan was to tackle my anxiety from a different angle, altitude. The Stoics, especially Marcus Aurelius, practiced this powerful visualization called the view from above. The goal is to mentally zoom out from your own life and see your problems from a cosmic perspective. As Marcus put it, when you want to understand humanity, you should look at earthly things as if you're watching from high above. That afternoon, a wave of social anxiety hit me. I had a party coming up, and I started worrying about what people would think and whether I'd make a fool of myself. You know the drill. Instead of letting those thoughts spiral, I stopped, closed my eyes, and started the exercise. I imagined floating up from my chair, looking down at myself in the room, then higher, seeing my building, my neighborhood, my city. I kept going, watching my country shrink into a patch of color on the globe, until the earth itself was just a pale blue dot in the vastness of space. I floated past planets and stars, seeing the entire Milky Way as a silent, swirling spiral of light. From up there, my worries about the party seemed almost ridiculous. In the grand scheme of things, of empires rising and falling, of geological time, of the sheer scale of the universe, my fear of saying something awkward at a social gathering was basically meaningless. This wasn't about telling myself my feelings were stupid. It was about putting them in context. It shrinks the power of your anxieties. When I opened my eyes, the anxiety hadn't vanished, but its teeth were gone. It was just a small, manageable thought, no longer a monster. Day 3. Negative visualization. Premeditatio malorum. Wednesday was the day I decided to lean into fear. I know it sounds completely backward, but it's a core Stoic practice called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of bad things. Instead of pushing anxious thoughts away, you calmly and deliberately think about what could go wrong. Seneca believed that unexpected troubles hit the hardest. By rehearsing potential misfortunes in your mind, losing your job, getting sick, failing at something, you rob them of their power to shock you. My big fear for the day was a presentation I had to give. My mind was already serving up a highlight reel of failure, forgetting my words, my slides crashing, the audience looking bored. Normally, I'd try to shove those thoughts down. But today, I did the opposite. I sat down for 10 minutes and walked myself through the absolute worst-case scenario. Okay, what if I completely blank? Well, I'd have my notes. What if the tech failed? I'd have a printed copy and could talk through the points. What if they hated it? I would listen to their feedback, learn from it, and do better next time. I would survive. Now, this isn't about being a pessimist. It's about being prepared. By picturing the worst, you realize two things. First, the worst is usually not as bad as your anxious mind makes it out to be. And second, you have way more resources to handle it than you think. You're basically giving yourself an inoculation against future pain. As Seneca said, if an evil has been pondered beforehand, the blow is gentle when it comes. When it was time for the actual presentation, I felt remarkably calm. I had already faced the worst in my imagination. The reality couldn't be scarier than that. Day 4. Voluntary discomfort. After 3 days of mental exercises, Thursday was about the body. The Stoics believed in building mental toughness through physical practice. The tool for this is voluntary discomfort, deliberately exposing yourself to small, safe hardships to expand your comfort zone and appreciate what you normally take for granted. This could be taking a cold shower, fasting for a bit, or sleeping on the floor. I decided to start my day with the classic, a cold shower. I stood there for a minute, dreading it. But I reminded myself of the point. To prove that I can handle being uncomfortable, to build discipline, and to feel incredibly grateful for the simple warmth I usually don't even think about. I turned the handle to cold. The initial shock was intense. Every part of me wanted to jump out, but I focused on my breath and stayed under the icy water for a full minute. When I finally turned it off, the feeling was amazing. It wasn't just a physical rush, it was a psychological win. I had faced something I didn't want to do, and I did it anyway. That small act of willpower carried through my whole day. A frustrating email didn't sting as much. A long line at the store felt less like a personal attack. By willingly choosing a small discomfort, I had strengthened my ability to handle the bigger, uncontrolled discomforts that life throws at you. It's a powerful reminder that you are tougher than you think. Day 5. The Stoic Journal. Friday was all about what might be the most powerful tool for putting all these lessons together. The Stoic Journal. This isn't just a diary for recording what happened. It's a workbook for looking at your day through the lens of Stoic virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Before bed, you ask yourself a few questions. What did I do well today? What did I do poorly? What threw me off my game, and why? What could I do better next time? That evening, I sat down and reviewed the day. A colleague had made a critical comment in a meeting that stung. The old me would have obsessed over it for hours, imagining all sorts of negative motives. But Day 5 me had a new job. I wrote down what happened, then I analyzed it. Did I act with courage? Yes, I spoke my piece. With justice. I tried to be fair. With temperance. That's where I failed. I let his comment get under my skin and lost my cool for a few minutes. I let something outside my control, his opinion, wreck my inner peace. Writing this down was incredibly clarifying. It took that vague emotional sting and turned it into something I could actually learn from. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about getting better. The journal becomes a mirror, showing you where your thinking is solid and where it needs work. I made a note. Next time I get unsolicited criticism, remember their opinion is an external. Respond with patience and don't let it hijack my calm. This is how philosophy stops being an idea and starts being a practice. Day 6. Amor Fati, loving your fate. Saturday brought the toughest challenge of the week, Amor Fati, a Latin phrase that means a love of fate. The idea is not just to accept what happens, but to embrace it. To see everything, the good, the bad, the inconvenient as necessary, and even good. The goal is to stop wishing for things to be different and instead to welcome them as they are, because that's the only path to peace. My test arrived in the form of a flat tire. I was on my way to meet a friend, already running late, when I heard that dreaded thump, thump, thump. My first reaction was a flash of anger. This is the last thing I need. But then I remembered Amor Fati. This event, right here, is my fate. The challenge wasn't to grudgingly accept it, but to find a way to love it. How on earth could I love a flat tire? I took a deep breath. Okay, this is an opportunity. An opportunity to practice patience. An opportunity to get better at changing a tire, which I was terrible at. An opportunity to practice the dichotomy of control. I can't control the nail in the road, but I can control how I react. Instead of seeing it as a roadblock, I tried to see it as part of my path. A necessary detour. I can't say I was filled with pure joy over the flat tire, but the mental shift was powerful. The anger vanished, replaced by a calm, problem-solving focus. It transformed a source of stress into a test of character. Day 7. Virtuous action. The sage. My final day, Sunday, was about pulling it all together. Stoicism isn't just a collection of mind games, it's a philosophy for how to live. The ultimate goal is to act with virtue, with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control in everything you do. The Stoics would often think about an ideal sage, a hypothetical, perfectly wise person, and ask, how would the sage handle this? I spent the day trying to live that out. At the grocery store, I consciously chose patience in a long checkout line. Temperance. I held the door for someone with their hands full. Justice. I finally had a difficult conversation I'd been avoiding. Courage. I paused before replying to a provoking email. Wisdom. These were all small things, but a philosophy is built on the foundation of small daily actions. Reflecting on the whole week, I was struck by the shift that had happened. That constant, anxious hum in the background of my life had quieted down. It wasn't gone, but it no longer had me in a stranglehold. The tools I had practiced sorting what I can and can't control, viewing problems from above, rehearsing for difficulty, embracing discomfort, reflecting on my actions, and loving my fate, had built a buffer. They created a space for me to choose reason over a panicked reaction. The climax, the turning point. The real turning point wasn't one single moment. It was a slow, dawning realization that crystallized on Sunday as I looked back through my journal. The person who started this experiment on Monday was a slave to his anxieties, tossed around by every external event and every imagined worst-case scenario. The person at the end of the week was freer, and that's when it all clicked. The goal of Stoicism isn't to get rid of emotions or to stop bad things from happening. That's impossible. The goal is to change your relationship with your emotions and to build the inner strength to handle whatever life throws at you. The anxiety I had been living with was almost entirely a product of my own mind, my flawed judgments, my need for control over the uncontrollable, and my fear of imaginary futures. Stoicism gave me a practical toolkit to take apart this self-made suffering. It taught me to focus my energy like a laser on my own thoughts and actions, the only things that are truly mine. It showed me that resilience, like a muscle, can be trained through practice. And it taught me that peace of mind doesn't come from a perfect, problem-free life, but from developing a calm and rational mind, no matter what's happening on the outside. Conclusion. So, did my 7-day experiment turn me into a perfect Stoic sage? Not even close. But it did fundamentally change how I deal with anxiety. The world is still just as chaotic, the notifications still pop up, and life will keep throwing curveballs. The difference is that I no longer feel like a helpless victim of my own anxious mind. I now have a set of practical, time-tested strategies I can turn to. Embracing Stoicism is an ongoing practice, not a one-week cure. It takes daily discipline. But the rewards are huge: greater inner peace, real resilience, and a more balanced way of moving through life's ups and downs. I learned that I can't control the waves, but I can learn how to surf. This ancient philosophy gave me the surfboard. It didn't solve all my problems, but it taught me that the solution to most of my worrying about those problems was in my own hands all along. And that, right there, is a superpower. If you found these Stoic principles helpful, let me know in the comments which one resonated with you the most. And for more practical guides on building a stronger mind, be sure to watch our next video on advanced mindfulness techniques. Thank you for watching.